I start the recording here. So, a very warm welcome to all of you, morning, evening, afternoon, from wherever you are logging in. I'm Pratigya Haran, a storyteller based in Chennai, and I'm more than happy to invite all of you to the second week of the Chennai Storytelling Festival. It is the 12th edition. Yes, thank you, Bruce, for that. Um, we have a series of 12 story sessions by and for adults, and this is the fourth one in the series of 12. So without taking any further time, I would like to invite the first teller of the day. Let me just spotlight Noora. Noora, are you there? Oh yes, of course, you're right in the middle. Like, I don't know how I missed you there. Let me just spotlight you.
Small.
Noora, please introduce yourself properly, fully, and please share a story.
Thank you so much. And also, I want to say a big thank you to everyone in Chennai who are spent so much time and bring us all together in this way for story, particularly Eric. Thank you. So I'm Norah Dooley. I'm a storyteller in Massachusetts. I don't know if people know the Massachusetts tribe was one of the first tribes to Indigenous people to meet the English who came to our shores here. And I live in an area right next to King Philip's Rock, which is Metacomet was the name of the leader. He was called King Philip by the English, but he led a rebellion against the English in the 1600s. So he was very well known. And my story today is going to be about trees and about tree huggers. So I was walking this earth for quite a long time before I learned that trees live in communities, that underneath the forest floor, there's this amazing network of connections between trees, and trees signal each other and share resources with each other, and they speak to each other. And they are just an amazing community. And it's not just like oak to oak or pine to pine, but interspecies. They share and protect each other. And in our country, and this is partly why I was so interested in this story of Gowda Devi, being a tree hugger it's actually an insult, right? So the Britannica Dictionary defines it, a tree hugger is someone who is regarded as foolish or annoying because of being overly concerned about protecting trees, animals, and other parts of the natural world from pollution, degradation, extinction, and other threats. So tree hugging is not something that is well regarded in my country. And when I heard this story, when I first heard this story, that I'm going to tell you today about Gowda Devi, I was really impressed. And, you know, in the US, we have taken much really inspiration from leaders and people who have created social change from India. So let me tell you this story. So high in the Himalaya Mountains, where India meets the Himalaya Mountains, and where Nanda Devi, a huge mountain, meets the sky, in the shadow of that mountain, there was a girl, a little girl, a young girl, maybe not little, but she was old enough to be taking the goats out to find some food for them. And she was walking along and she heard a strange sound. She heard the sound of a truck. Well, that was unusual because there were very few roads that would be able to drive a truck on. She heard a truck, not one, but two. And so she followed the sound and she went and she saw a truck, and it was driving over this big slab that had created sort of a natural bridge over a chasm in the mountain. And it was driving right towards a grove of trees. Well, that was very strange. And so she walked up there, and the men unloaded the truck, and they had axes and they had saws, and they sat down to prepare some lunch for themselves. And she went over to them and she said, "Excuse me, sirs, what are you doing?" They said, "Why do you want to know?" "Excuse me, but what are you doing?" "We're here to take these trees." She said, oh no, no, I've been told we don't take trees." "Never mind, little girl. Just go away, leave us alone." Well, she left them alone. She went running down that mountain. And as she ran, she remembered all the things that her aunties had told her as she collected berries and fruits in the forest. They told her the they create this beautiful space for things to grow. They make it possible for things to grow from the earth. They shade things. They allow animals to live. The trees are like our brothers and sisters. And she remembered how her grandmother, Gauda Devi, had told her that she should never, ever cut down a tree. You see, she had to collect firewood every day, and sometimes she had to go very far away to collect firewood. And she said, "But grandmother, why don't we just cut down a tree?" "Oh, no, 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 we must never do that," her grandmother said. "The trees are like our brothers and sisters. They provide everything for us. And most importantly, they have roots that are like hands that hold the earth to the side of the mountain. Without them holding the earth to the side of the mountain, when the big rains come, our village and all of us could be washed away. The trees are our brothers and sisters, and we live with them and from them." So she was thinking all this as she ran down the side of the mountain till she got to the center of her village, and she picked up a stick and she went to the gong in the center, and bong, 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 she raised the alarm, and all the women came to see what was happening. And I say all the women because the men were not there that day. The men had been called away to go receive compensation for land that had been taken from them, over a decade before. And they were told if they did not go in person, each one of them, they would not be able to receive the money that they had been owed for a very long time. So they had left very early in the morning, and all the men had left the village. This was not a coincidence, because the people coming to take the trees had set this up so there would be no men in the village when they came to do this. Well, Gowara Devi stood up and said, "Take the trees? No, that cannot be." And she led all the women up the mountain to where the men were. And she stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, we come in peace, but we must tell you that you cannot take our trees." Well, the leader of the men said, "Old woman, you don't get to tell us what to do. I have a piece of paper here from the city. It says we can do what we want with these trees." She said, "You must not take these trees. These trees are everything to us. They are our food. They are fodder for our animals. They are fertilizer for our gardens. They're fuel for our fires. They're fiber for us to make things from. They funnel the rains through their roots so that they gently fill the rivers and the streams. You cannot take these trees. They are our life. They are our brothers and sisters." "Old woman, I have a paper here. It says I can do what I want." And he also took out a gun. He said, "You need to move away." She said, "No, if you are going to take these trees, you will have to cut through me." And she stood up and she hugged the tree. Well, the man who was the leader said, "Take her." But the men who had come to work to take down the trees, well, they were just poor day laborers. They had not come to kill women who looked just like their own sisters, mothers, and daughters. They had come to just cut some trees. So they threw down their axes. Well, the man with the paper was very angry, but every time he got one of his workers to go and cut down a tree, another woman went and hugged it, and they were unable to cut any tree. And finally, he was frustrated enough. He said, "That's it. Pack up the tools. We'll go." So they threw all their tools into the trucks, got into the trucks. They drove from that glade of trees over that slab. And when the women heard the truck go around the curve of that small mountain track, together with all of their strength, they picked up that slab so that it fell down the mountain, and there was no longer an easy access of a truck to those trees. But the women were not satisfied with that. They stayed there all night into the next day, just to be sure, just to be sure. And when the men came back from their trip to that town from far away, they told them the story, and they told that story to the Chipko leaders. So the Chipko leaders of the Chipko movement to hug trees was greatly, greatly inspired by that story. And that happened in exactly 50 years ago. So in late March, it will be an exact 50-year anniversary of that action of Gowara Devi. Now, we tell this story in the United States, and we tell this story where Gowara Devi is the young girl, and that she is the hero, and she is the one who saved the trees. Because we have a very individualistic society in our the United States, and we like to build up one hero, I think possibly so we can cut them down. But I think who actually saved the trees was the community that held those women, as those women held those trees, as those trees held the earth beneath their feet against the mountain and supported their lives. So that's the story of Guaradevi saves the trees. And there is an epilogue. There is an epilogue, and that is that devastating floods in that area of Uttarakhand have continued. And I will only go for the ones in this century because there were many in the past century. But in 2013, due to overdevelopment, deforestation, landslides, these things, you can say, well, it's natural. The Irish like to say, if you are familiar with the what's called the potato famine or the Great Hunger, as the Irish prefer to call it, the good Lord may have made the blight, but the English made the famine. And so, yeah, sure, rains might be natural, but landslides are not. And here in the United States, we see this, the entire state of California, in Oregon, all over. We see this where trees are taken down. And then some years later, people say, oh my goodness, how did this happen? Nobody knows how this happened. But Gaura Devi and the people, the Bhutia people of Uttarakhand, knew exactly how this would happen. And they knew that the value of the trees was in their living, not in their timber. So that's my epilogue.
Thank you, Noora. Thank you so much. Let me just um, spotlight myself so it's a little easier to get speaking. You spoke about the Chipko movement. I remember reading this when I was a child in school. Um, this was something that we were taught as part of a school curriculum, saying such and such a person had started off the Chipko movement with the idea of saving trees. But I read this about 20, 25, sorry, 30 years ago in school. But unfortunately, nothing has really changed. And as you're saying, it's only gotten worse. And you're talking about 2013, right? This year, 2023, 22, there have been so many more such landslides and lots of lives lost because of our own foolishness. So, a much needed story. And thank you so much for sharing that. Could you throw some more light on why you chose this story, or how does this story really sit in your setting at you were saying at your community that you share the story with?
Well, sometimes I am asked to bring stories that have environmental themes, right? So when I reach for a story that shows how community is so important to if we want to change things, if we want to have a good life, we want to have a life that can survive the difficulties of being alive, which, there are always inherent difficulties. It doesn't always have to be humans shooting themselves in the foot, as we say here. It's just the nature of living. So that this story is such a great example of that. And also the fact that it was women. So I'm the mother of 4 daughters. So that's important to me as well. So I've always looked for stories that had strong female characters to tell my daughters. And I first saw this in a book, again, like 30 years ago. It was a picture book.
Mm.
And I was, Garda Davies Saves the Trees. What is that? Let me read this to my children, because I had not heard of the Chipko movement. And I think it's wonderful that you learned it in your curriculum, but here in the United States, like I said, being a tree hugger is a derogatory term, and it's you're not to be taken seriously because you obviously have too much care for this. And I think the stories of the floods and the degradation and the loss of life that have followed the kind of development that we see not just in northern India, but in California, in Oregon, down in Atlanta, Georgia right now, right? It's inspirational, first of all, and maybe looking at what's happening now, we all need to be a lot more annoying.
A very universal story in that sense. Yes, very true. Opening up to the audience, any thoughts that you would like to share?
Yeah,
I
Ambuja
see.
here, Priti. I was here half an hour back when Nora had. Sorry, I couldn't. I'm not. I'm unable to switch on the video, Nora. We had a little conversation half an hour back, if you remember. You were asking for the pronunciation. So when she said I'm going to share the story, that actually pulled me in. Like I really wanted to listen to the story. I'm traveling now, but still didn't want to miss the story. The way you had crafted it. We have heard the story many times, but still, it kind of felt like, okay, you were there and you were actually feeling like you were, experiencing what was happening there. Yeah, thanks much, Nora, for that.
Oh, thank you. When I tell a story, I don't use a script. So I literally have pictures in my head that I'm narrating. And when the pictures are good and in the right order, the story comes out okay. If the pictures get blurry or mixed up, not so much. But I don't use a script. So thank you.
Hi, this is Roja. I am talking from Bangalore. And thank you very much. While you said that you have pictures in your mind, it helped me create pictures in my mind while you were narrating. It was so powerful. And I am from India. I studied in India. Unfortunately, I never heard the story. This is my first time hearing the story. Thank you very much. And I am one of those who loves trees, so that also helped me relate much more to this story. Thank you very much.
Welcome. And this is not the first, historically, the first tree hugging story from India. The Bishnoi people in the 1700s had a beautiful forest. And Bishnoi apparently means the 29 principles. And one of their principles was not to kill any green thing. And they, in Rajasthan.
Sorry, Norah, your voice broke. Can you repeat? Vishnoi people.
The Bishnoi people in Rajasthan in the 1700s, the king of that area wanted their forest. So they had one of their principles they lived by was not to cut down green things. And when they came to take the forest, Amrita Devi, so another woman, stepped forward and said, nope, you'll have to cut through me first. But unfortunately, they did. And then her two daughters stepped forward after she died. And it took 363 of the Bishnoi people to die before the soldiers went back to their king and said, this is not working. This is not going to work. They're not going to stop. And so that, if you look on your map, you'll find that forest still exists 300 years later. It's unfortunate that that had to happen to make that happen, right?
And I think we need to tell these stories more to our next generations. I'm not sure if it still exists in the school curriculums. All these things, they're so powerful and will inculcate such habits in the kids right from childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Roja. Thank you for that. June, yes, you want to go ahead?
Yes, Nora, what is the reaction you get from the children? I know certainly in the United States and Canada, where I live, many of the children have never gone into the forest to collect wood. So I'd love to hear what the reactions you get and responses.
Well, when I tell it to younger children, Gaura Devi is the girl, and I try to make it more relatable to the younger children. And I explain things, so I go into more detail, like we collect wood because we cook on fires. And this is,
Okay.
not long ago, but in a place where people cook with wood. And I might start by asking questions like, have you ever collected leaves to make, depending on where I am. If I'm not in the city, I might try to relate it to things in their daily life.
Okay.
Or have you ever hugged a tree, right? So those are the kinds of things that I try to do. But unfortunately, I started this session out by saying that I don't get asked to do straight storytelling as much as I would like to. So I don't get to tell the story as much as I would like to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, June.
I
Yes,
see Eric.
Eric, you want to go ahead?
I see Eric.
Yes, yes, yes.
Please go ahead, Eric.
Well, this was a historical story, a true life story, as it's sometimes called. But many times, true life stories, especially ones that become popular, almost become folk tales and may have a kind of archetypal underpinning. So if that makes sense, what would you say the archetypal essence of this story is?
Well, I'm not familiar with archetypal jargon.
Well,
But
use
to
another
me,
word, the mythic,
the mythic thing is that, well, I feel the connection between trees and the connections between people, right, is the overarching theme for me, right? That the trees are connected in a way that we find amazing because we think of them as inanimate, almost objects, as we objectify them. And just that there rises from that many things coming together. What is it? The whole is greater than the sum of all its parts, whatever, something like that.
Well,
So I'm curious to know, what would you say the archetypal?
well, correct me if I am wrong, but it seems the basic action of the story is local women organizing and resisting, and standing up and preventing the destruction. So that's a kind of archetypal, or that's a story type, to use folklore language, right? Women together, resisting the patriarchy. Is that a story type?
Yeah. No, that's definitely a story type. It's also a kind of a thing that happens a lot, right? And it's interesting. I don't know how to say it's BHUTIA, the Bhutia people in this story. They have a very egalitarian social status between men and women, which I think probably has something to do with how this story played out. That the men in the city who gave someone a paper to say you can do whatever you want didn't understand that there are some cultures where if you take all the men away, the women are far from helpless.
Great, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. I like that thought, that women are far from helpless, and that is so true. I think with that, thank you so much, Noora, once again for the story.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next teller for the day, we have Dada Maheshvarananda from North Carolina. Let me just spotlight you. Yes, Dada, please introduce yourself fully and tell us a story. Dada, we can't hear you.
Now you can hear me, I believe, correct?
Yes, we can.
I was born in the United States. When I was 21, I learned yoga and meditation as a hobby. Back then, only hippies and weirdos did yoga and meditation. But I was a bit of both, so I tried it with a group called Ananda Marga, the Path of Bliss. I started to feel more peace, more happiness, and more love than I dreamed possible. So when I was 24, I flew to India to train as a sannyasi monk. The color orange that I wear signifies service and sacrifice. It reminds me that my life is dedicated to serving humanity. I worked in Southeast Asia for 14 years, in Brazil for 11 years, 3 years in Europe, and then 10 years in Venezuela. I love the people I met in each of the 32 countries I worked in. I love my work as a monk, teaching, consulting. Then, On February 2nd, 2016, time stopped. I was taking a domestic flight in Venezuela when I was suddenly arrested by Interpol officers. What am I accused of? I asked. They said I was accused of conspiracy to traffic a large shipment of arms and weapons to India 21 years before. I had absolutely no connection with that crime, but all my efforts to explain my innocence fell on deaf ears. When the authorities faxed the Indian government and they learned of my detention, they said they wanted me extradited, so I was put in jail. My cell phone and laptop were taken away, never returned. All my plans, commitments, all my speaking and writing engagements suddenly canceled. The cell I was put in was crowded, very crowded. It was 3 meters by 6 meters, that's 10 to 20 feet, with 20 men inside. It smelled like a locker room. When the steel bars locked behind me, I shook hands with every prisoner. One of them turned out to be a lawyer. When he heard the details of my case, he said it would take many months to sort this out. So I sat on the cement floor of the cell and made a calendar for 1 year in my notebook to keep track of the time. I'm a spiritual person. I believe in a higher power that guides the universe and guides us too. That first day in the cell, I had a talk with that higher power. Okay, God, you know that I'm completely innocent of this crime that I'm accused of. However, I believe that behind every material cause, there's a spiritual cause for everything. You must want me to be here. Why? I really don't know. But if this is where you want me to serve, then here I am. I remembered about 2 good friends of mine who lived in New England. Both of them are highly respected in their community for their service, their community service. Both of them separately were in automobile accidents that were not their fault. Neither did anything wrong, but they were both severely injured and time stopped for them too. They were hospitalized for months. I remembered that. We lived in that cell around the clock, except no clocks or watches were allowed. At night, when we slept on the floor, we were so crowded that sometimes I felt the body of one man on one side and the body of the next man on the other side. After a few weeks, I contracted scabies, a contagious skin infection caused by mites that bury into the skin and lay eggs, causing terrible itching that I suffered the whole time I was there. Prisoners were in for all sorts of crimes. Listening to their stories, I came to believe that maybe 10% of them were innocent like I was. Once I noticed that the 2 men and 1 transgender woman who were all sleeping around me were all murderers. They'd each pleaded not guilty, but each admitted privately that they'd actually done the murders they were accused of. I was not allowed to make phone calls. I was not allowed to send or receive any letters. I had no contact with my friends except during weekly visits, which were timed by the guards to last exactly 5 minutes. Then began another 7 days and nights waiting for my 5 minutes of bliss. About once a month, I was put in handcuffs and taken outside and driven in a van to the courthouse for a hearing. It was a lovely reprieve to be able to look through the barred windows of the van and see the colorful city I knew so well. Thousands of people, street vendors, chaotic drivers, everyone moving and behaving normally. The handcuffs on my wrists reminded me of the 12 million men, women, and children who were kidnapped in Africa and taken to the Americas as slaves, all of them innocent. No food is served in the Caracas jail. I survived because every morning, one of my faithful friends cooked a vegetarian meal for me and brought it with drinking water across the city and gave it to the guards with my name on it. 10 a.m., the guards passed the food to us through the bars. Some prisoner has no family or friends in Caracas, but nobody went hungry because those of us who had food shared it with those who didn't. I lost a lot of weight because I gave almost half my food away each day. I had other wonderful friends far away. Mira Price organized a campaign that inspired over 100 people in the United States to donate funds for my legal defense. Other friends did the same in South America and Europe. Didi Nanda Sadhana, a yogic nun in Caracas, worked tirelessly to negotiate with my lawyers, organize the daily food deliveries, and visit me most weeks. But I knew almost nothing of this because for me, time had stopped. I smuggled letters out to my friends during my weekly visits, but only twice did I receive a letter from anyone because my friends were afraid that if a guard found it, I'd somehow get in more trouble than I already was. I have a Brazilian friend, Frei Beto, who's a Catholic monk and a famous writer. He was tortured and imprisoned for 4 years during the Brazilian dictatorship. When he heard that I was in jail, he sent me a copy of the book he had just written, Finding Happiness in Adversity. That was a great solace to me because he knew from personal experience the kind of ordeal I was going through. My daily meditation gave me strength. I meditated 4 times a day as I usually do. About 4 o'clock in the morning, when the lights and the TV were off and everyone was quiet, sleeping, I would sit in the silence for 3 hours and focus on what is beyond all time, universal love. There was one moment after I'd been in jail for a few weeks when I started to feel sorry for myself. I was writing in my journal, and I started a sentence saying how terrible things were and how unhappy I felt. Before I could finish the sentence, though, a prisoner who was playing cards on the other side of the cell called out, "Dada, estás bien? Everything okay?" I looked up, he smiled, and turned back to his card game. He obviously had no idea what I was thinking. But I also feel sure that I heard God say to me, "Don't think like that. That's not what this is about. This is a spiritual retreat for you. though not a very pleasant one. The Caracas jail, like most prisons in the world, is a terrible place. It's designed to dehumanize prisoners, making them powerless and helpless. Many suffer depression or anger. Yet to vent anger at the guards who maintain the system is suicidal. So anger and fights sometimes broke out between the prisoners. I hope I was a good companion to my fellow inmates. I was released after 7.5 months into the custody of the immigration officers because my 1-year visa had expired while I was in jail. I spent the next 2 months in the immigration detention center. It was more comfortable. Everyone had a bunk bed. There was a little space to walk around. But we were fed 3 small meals a day. But we were still 30 men locked up in a large basement cell. 10 women were in the next cell. The only crime we had committed was that all of us had been born in the wrong country. This is the same crime that has 36,000 people in the United States immigration detention centers. In November 2016, after 9.5 months, I was escorted to the Caracas airport and put on a plane to be deported back to the United States. The ordeal was over. I remembered the psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, who was sent to the Auschwitz concentration camp, where his entire family was murdered. After the war, he wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. He said, "The one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance." I agree. I think that suffering is a state of mind. I still wonder about that experience. I think that my meditation practice gave me the strength and will to resist depression and to view my detention as a spiritual retreat. I believe it helped me learn 3 things: patience, humility, and surrender. I think very painful experiences can be opportunities for growth. Thank you. Namaskar.
Oh my God, Dada, that is such a powerful piece of your life that you shared with us. I really don't know what to say after this. I mean, patience and humility in that situation is easier said than done. And hats off to you, really, hats off to you have to manage something like this. And thank you so much for sharing this with us. There's lots to ponder over and lots to think of for each one of us on this. Thank you, Dada. I think I will open it up to the audience to share their views.
I love how the first thing that you did entering a jail cell was to greet with respect all of your fellow
Inmates.
I guess is the word for it, but that's dehumanizing. All of your fellow humans who were in that space with you, right? Very inspiring. Thank you.
Ambuja,
It
you
also
want to say something?
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Noora,
I was wait. Can I go ahead?
Go ahead, Ambuja. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dada. Actually, I love the way like you were putting the positivity that you had at that difficult moment of life, and how you attach spirituality in each and every thing. Personally, I always have a strong belief, whatever happens, it has a reason behind it which we may not be aware of, and we may not be able to accept it at that moment, but after a few years pass by, you always feel, oh, this is why this happened at that moment, for me to understand this the better way. So I could resonate so much with your story, and I this is the first time I'm listening to you, and my respect for you is like it has gone. I mean, I respect you so much for all that you have gone through and what you shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambuja. Divya, you want to go ahead?
Namaste, Dadaji. Really inspiring, and first time I'm listening to you as well. That one statement said a lot. I hope I was a good companion to the inmates of my cell. I mean, that itself kind of says everything. I felt that way. What a huge heart. So thank you for sharing this incident.
Thanks, Divya. June, you want to go ahead?
Dada, I like the way you framed your story. There were so many elements that were shocking and horrific, but you combined them with elements of hope and caring. And I like the way you intertwine that, because it kept me engaged and feeling hopeful through that story.
Thank you.
Roja, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Dada, for such inspirational sharing such intimate and sensitive story. It's not easy to talk about such things. Incidentally, I have a cousin who has gone through such an experience, and he came out stronger than ever. So I quite relate with, I mean, I've seen him going through all this. I quite relate with what you said, that there's a reason behind everything happening, and you should be positive and come out of it stronger. Thank you so much for narrating the beautiful story.
Thank you.
Not so beautiful in that way, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Great for your brother.
I think, like everybody was saying, that excuse me, is the positivity that kept going, throughout the story. To have that level head, to be able to not get frustrated, and even that once that you said, when you were almost spiraling down the negativity, there was a voice which brought you out. I mean, it's really giving me goosebumps even thinking about it. I wonder how you went through all of that. So thank you, Dada. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll move on to our next story for the day. Heather Forrest, let me just spotlight you. Yes, so we have Heather Forrest from New York sharing a story with us. Welcome, Heather Forrest. Please introduce yourself fully and share a story.
Thank you. I'm Heather Forrest. I live on a small family farm on the North Shore of Long Island in the United States. And I have always loved folk tales. Since childhood, there's always been a folktale book beside my bed to transport me into my dreams. And over the years, I've started to tell them in my own way, with my own approach. And this morning or evening, depending on where we are on the planet, I would like to share a legend. Much has been said in the world of Irish folklore about the giant Finn McCool. I'd read stories about him as a kid, but not much is spoken about his clever wife, Una. And behind every great hero, there's generally a moving force, and Una is an underappreciated woman who comes into her own by the end of this tale. So I'd like to share this story with you. Finn McCool was a giant who was the leader of a band of ancient Irish warriors in the 3rd century. The band of warriors were called the Fianna, and this is one of the stories that's become popular in the northern part of Ireland and has been told by the tongues of tellers over time for many, many generations. Here's my version. One morning, Una said to her husband, Finn, Finn, come and sit down with me and have a nice cup of tea. Oh, I don't have time, he said. I have mighty work to do. I am building a causeway. Oh, well, I've offered you some tea and I have no water. Finn, wait, before you rush off to do your mighty work, could you take this kettle to the well on the hill and fill it? Oh, Una, I told you, I don't have time. I have mighty work to do. I don't have time for a chore. And he strode out the door. Una went to the door and hollered after him, Well, I have mighty work to do too, Finn. There's no appreciation and no tea. Finn, meanwhile, walked down the road all the way to the edge of the sea, and he began lifting giant hexagonal stones and putting them in place. Oh, these are mighty stones, and I am a mighty man. He was building a land bridge that stretched across the Irish Sea all the way to the shores of Scotland. And when he put the very last hexagonal stone in place, he was feeling so mighty, he let out an ear-piercing war cry and shouted, I'm the strongest giant to walk these lands. Pleased with himself, he turned to go home when suddenly he felt the ground beneath him trembling, and he looked over his shoulder, and there in the distance, coming towards him, he saw the red-bearded Scottish giant Benindonner coming after him. Oh no, I've done it now. He must have heard me, and he's coming to fight. Oh, that man is a contender, and he's 10 times my size. As fast as his legs would carry him, Finn ran across the causeway and all the way up the hill to his house on Knockmany Hill at its top. He burst in through the door, hollering, Una, Una, oh, good Finn, you're home so soon. Could you take the kettle? Oh, Una, I've no time. Listen to me. The red-bearded Scottish giant Benindonner is coming to fight. Oh, he's a contender, and he's 10 times my size. Oh, he's come after me before, but I've always managed to slip away before he catches up to me face to face. Oh, but now I've done it. I taunted him. He must have been nearby, and he heard me. And Una, I fear, he's tracking me to our home. There's no avoiding a fatal fight. Wait, Finn, did you just say he's never caught up to you face to face? Nah, he's never caught up to me. Oh, well, then he's never seen your face. No, he's never seen me. Oh, well, oh, there's hope for us. Don't worry. Leave this to me. And Una dashed into the pantry and came out with 21 round iron griddles. She made a massive batch of bannock batter, and she put an iron griddle inside of each one. And then she stacked those 21 bannock pancakes into a tower on the counter. And then she made just one bannock pancake without an iron griddle, and she set it off to the side where she could find it later. Una, do you feel the rumbling? Don't worry, Finn, we're almost ready for him. Now, for the baby cradle. She dashed out to the shed and she dragged the bull's wooden feeding trough into the house. She set it in the middle of the room and she filled it with little pillows and soft blankets. And she said to Finn, 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 climb into this baby cradle. Looks like a baby cradle. Climb into this cradle and pretend to be your own child. I won't do that. Oh, we'll see what you'll do. And now for the baby bonnet. My sun hat is big enough. And she snatched it off the shelf. And as Finn squirmed to get away from her, she tied the bonnet about his head with a tidy bow and said, "Oh, don't bicker with me now, Finn. There's no time. I can see that bully of a giant coming up the road through the window." Suddenly, the ground and the house began to shake, and Finn began to quake. He quickly climbed into that baby cradle and pulled the covers up to his chin. Una gently tucked him in and said, "Suck your thumb." And then she went to the door, for there was a pounding. And when she opened the door, there before her stood the red-bearded Scottish giant Benandonner, who said, "I'm looking for Finn McCool. When I find him, I'll prove I'm the strongest giant to walk these lands." "Oh, well then, you've come to the right place. This is Finn's own home, but he's not here right now. It's just me alone with our little wee baby boy. Oh, but do come in. You can wait for Finn, and I'll fix tea." The fearsome giant crouched in through the doorway and walked across the room. He paused at the cradle and looked in. Your child is rather large. Oh, he's ordinary sized for our family. Why, he barely fills his father's palm. Finn is rather enormous, you know, and you are very brave to be challenging him, being as puny as you are. Oh, I've never seen Finn face to face. He always squirms away before I catch up to him. But now, now I've tracked him to his lair, and I will fight him to the finish. And he sat down in a chair, and in the baby cradle, Finn sucked his thumb. "Oh, what's the matter with my memory? I'm out of water, and I've offered you tea. Could you do me a favor? Take this kettle to the 3 boulders on the hill. Move the middle one. There's a spring. Move the stones. I saw those boulders on my way up. They're 20 times the size of me." "Well, Finn moves the stones any time I ask. Are you saying you're not as strong as Finn McCool?" If Finn McCool can move the stones, I can move the stones." And he took the kettle and he went out to the hill and he moved the middle boulder, and a gush of water came. It cut a cleft in the earth 400 feet long, with a waterfall tumbling down its sides. It's called Lumford's Glen, and it is there to this very day. He filled the kettle, brought it in, gave it to Una, and sat down again in the chair. "Oh my, you look a bit hot from your efforts. Could you please turn the house? There's a far better breeze coming from the south." "Turn the house? Well, that's impossible." "Well, Finn turns the house any time I ask. Are you saying you're not as strong as Finn McCool?" If Finn McCool can turn the house, I can turn the house." When Finn in the baby cradle felt the house move, he sucked both his thumbs. "Oh, my. Now, you look a little hungry from all this work I've put you through. Peckish, are you? Well, would you like a little bit of this tiny snack I've made for Finn since he's not here to enjoy it? She handed him one of those bannock pancakes with the iron griddle in it, and he took it from her and chomped down. Blat! I've chipped my tooth. What kind of a pancake do you make that's so hard? Ordinary pancakes for our family. Why, it's the same kind of a pancake I give my little wee babe. Now, in the baby cradle, Finn finally caught on, and he let out a hungry yowl that was loud enough to send the crows from the garden. Una handed him that one bannock pancake that she'd set aside without the iron griddle, and she gave it to Finn. He took it from her and ate it with a dribbly grin. Wah, what kind of teeth does that child have to be eating a pancake that hard? Ordinary teeth for our family. And he's even got a new one. Open your mouth, little child. Open your beautiful little mouth and show off your new tooth to our little guest. And Una grabbed the giant's arm and drew it toward the baby cradle and pushed his finger right into Finn's mouth. And Finn chomped down as hard as he could. Yoo! The giant jumped back and said, oh, if the strength of the child is even a hint of the strength of the father, I'm leaving. Tell Finn I've changed my mind about having that fight. Oh, you can tell him yourself. He should be coming up the road any moment. I'll rush him along for you. And she ran outside and started hollering down the road. Oh, Finn McCool, hurry on home if you can hear me. There's a man here waiting for you who wants to have a talk with you about having a fight. Just hearing the name of Finn McCool made the red-bearded Scottish giant Ben Donner's knees knock, and he dashed out the door and rushed past Una, down the road, across the causeway, and all the way home to Scotland. And when he stepped on the very last stone and leaped onto the land, he had jumped with such force that the whole center of the causeway sank to the bottom of the Irish Sea, where those stones sit to this very day. Meanwhile, Una was thinking about her mighty work that day, and she turned to go back into the house when she saw Finn. He was standing in the doorway, hollering, I'm the strongest giant to walk these lands. Hush, Finn. Hush and quit your bragging before another contender hears you and comes to fight. Oh, dear Una, dear wife, you are right. Oh, and thank you for saving my life today. You know, I really wasn't in the mood for fighting. Anyway, he adjusted his baby bonnet, and he and Una went into the house together, and they sat down for a peaceful cup of tea.
Oh, what fun, Heather. Really enjoyed that story. I could literally see the giant with the bonnet tied around him in that little cradle, if you want to call that. But such a lovely story, such visual story that was had a great fun. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Priyanka, you want to go
Thank
ahead?
you.
Yes, sure, Pratigya. Hi, Heather. What a heartwarming story. One of my very favorite one. I would like to share something very special. To me, that is for the first time when I went to Isle of Staffa in Scotland, I saw this, hexagonal structures that is made of lava, molten lava, which is the part of the giant Benetona. And on the other side, I could see Ireland, and they said on the other side lived Finn McCool. And I dreamt, that I wish I one day will be there. And that one day happened, went to Giant's Causeway. But I have been telling this story for eons, but believe me, Heather, when I heard your version, this is a beautiful way you have once again addressed patriarchy. Because always I have been telling this from the version of Finmakul. But Una, because nowadays in Indian mythology also we uh, keep a lot of stress on the female characters because we don't speak about them. We always speak about the Benandonas and the Finmakuls, the Ramas and the Ravanas and the Pandavas and the Kauravas from all the mythology from all around the world. But I think it is time we reclaim our space, and you are one of those people who is doing that. So congratulations. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful insight. There are so many stories that are made of characters of all genders, and sometimes it's interesting to look at a story from the point of view of all of the characters and see whose story you want to tell, because that story could be told from any one of the three characters' point of view. I told it as the narrator, but I created a thread that centered on Una because I think there are too many passive princesses in the world of folk tales, and I'm always looking for this strong female character. I like Shiros.
Oh, yes, we do. We all love Shiros, don't we? Anybody else? Yes, Soumya, please go ahead.
Delightful, delighted. I just was waiting for you to burst into a song. Can you sing for us?
Well, I think about the voice as an instrument, and it is an instrument that whispers, that speaks, that sings, and that shouts. It's all the same instrument. And in this story, I chose not to have song, although I often use actual singing in my work to bring a folktale to life. But in this one, I was working with voicings. There are three characters. They needed different voices, and then me, the narrator, who has to have an attitude about the whole thing also. And in order to find those voices, it's a very musical experience to find the placement. So I think about my storytelling as a kind of story singing anyway, whether I'm making something that is recognizably a song or the subtle shift between the voicing of one character and the other. And interestingly, to find those voices, I told the story 3 times to myself in working on it. I told it as Benandonar, I told it as Finmakul, I told it as Una. And when they spoke the story in their own voice, slowly but surely, the character voices kind of came together based on those images that we heard about in our first story about the tree huggers. Those images are what informs the sound of the language and the sound of my character voices. So yes, I think I was singing in short.
What a beautiful, you workshopped it for us. Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
sure were singing, Heather. And as you said, you were singing very beautifully in 4 different voices, and that came across very well. Thank you so much for that. Norah, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I just want to say thank you to Heather. I just went to Northern Ireland for the first time and saw the causeway, and I know the story. Many of us know the story, but to hear it so beautifully told, and I just love the words that you picked were so beautiful, and the humor was so very Irish. I really appreciated that. And of course, Heather Forrest is someone who has been an inspiration to me. She has amazing books and collections of stories that I use in my teaching of teachers. So thank you, Heather. I've been singing your praises for many years now. It's nice to
well,
hear you.
thank you. Thank you. Actually, this story is from my newest anthology, Ancient and Epic Tales from Around the World. And it is in the book different than what I just told, because in my work, I've gone often to the library in the 398.2 section of the library to find folktales, and I've made made the story go from page to performance. In this case, now I can go to my own books and try to bring the story that I've already chosen to bring forward and put in an anthology into performance. And the story doesn't start with the scene of inviting Finn for tea at the beginning in my book. I added that when I decided I'd like to go from page to performance, because I wanted this story to be about Una, not about Finn building the causeway. And so in the traditional tale from the 3rd century, in the legends of Finn McCool, there's no issue about poor Una's just trying to get a cup of tea. That was a thread that I wove compositionally through to kind of create an arc of change for each of the characters. And I think it's important when you're braiding different characters into a story for all of the characters to evolve and have some sort of an arc. And all the characters in this story change. And Una goes from being unappreciated and no tea to a peaceful cup of tea at the end with her husband. And Benindonor goes from being fierce to fearful. And Finn is braggadocious at the beginning and ends up with a baby bonnet on his head. So by looking at those 3, braiding the characters together, I was also braiding the arc of how they changed. Because as listeners, I think what we're most interested in is change. And we want something to happen. We want something to happen next. And what brings the story to life is what brings life to life. The constant in the universe is change. So when we recognize that there's transformation and change in the characters, we're actually celebrating something that's necessary in the world, which is transformation and change. And so I'm attracted to stories that give me an opportunity to celebrate that basic understanding of how all things in the universe are interconnected through change. And so much for that.
Heather, I think as Soumya just pointed out, it looks like you've given us another mini workshop on how to move from page to stage using your own stories and how you tweak them. Thanks again for that. Roja, you want to say something?
This one point. I mean, I heard everybody talking about the story and how it was narrated. Just one point I would like to mention is I love the way Heather built the contradiction between strength of the giant versus the intelligence and smartness of Una, acting on time, thinking on time. So that's a very powerful contradiction that was very well built and narrated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think cleverness comes in many different ways. And what I loved about Una's cleverness is that it was unexpected. You don't know why she rushed in to get those iron griddles. You know, what was going to be the baby cradle? Where's the baby bonnet going to come from? Those are all kinds of questions that, as I'm looking for images to unfold the story, so it becomes a film in your own mind, the cinema of the story and the details. That's part of the artistic process, is to choose what to put in and what to leave out. Just enough and not too much. I think most stories can, I'm a gardener, and pruning plants is what I do in my farming season. It's important to be able to know what to take out of a plant and what to leave in. It's important to know what to not talk about and just find just the right details that help move the story along, so that and not faster than people can picture them. Because if there are more details than people can imagine, then they can't keep up with your movie. So it has to go just the right speed so that people can follow the pictures that are being made in their own minds. And I think that's what I liked about the final version of this story that featured not Finn but Una, was that I really delighted in illuminating the details. And I think a little detail like that she pulled the bull's feeding trough into the middle of the room and she filled it with little pillows and soft blankets. You know, that's all you really need to make a baby cradle out of a feeding trough. How the sunbonnet, you know, that should be large enough. And the tidy bow, tying a tidy bow is kind of like the little gesture that you do for a little kid, a little tidy bow. And it's the humbling detail that turns this fierce giant into a baby. And maybe that's one of the secrets of the story magic in that these fearful, huge creatures are brought down in size so that we can handle them. And that's a good life lesson. If you can make a tidy bow around your giant's head, they're not as devastatingly powerful as they might have thought they were to begin with.
Beautiful. Thank you, Heather. I think I also love the analogy of gardening to, how much to prune and how much to leave behind. That's a beautiful message to take for all us storytellers. On that note, thanks once again, Heather. Moving on to our next teller for the day, we have Laxmi Balaji from Toronto. Let me just spotlight you. Hi, Laxmi. Please introduce yourself fully and share a story with us.
Hello everyone. It is nice meeting you all, and thanks for letting me telling the story. I am Laxmi Balaji, currently living in Toronto. I am from India. So as Priyanka told for Heather's story, woman empowerment, or whatever we can tell, I am also going to tell a story based on woman. So I can start the story. Today, I am going to tell you a story from Hindu mythology. There are three main gods in Hindu mythology: Lord Brahma, the creator; Lord Vishnu, the preserver; and Lord Shiva, the destroyer. During the 4th and 8th century AD, there lived these super duper devotees of Lord Shiva. They grouped together and named as Nayan Margal. Nayan Margal. There were totally 64 of them. Today, I am going to tell you a story from one of this Nayan Margal. Her name is Karaikal Ammayar. Karaikal Ammayar. She is one of the 3 women in the 64 Nayan Margals. During 5th century AD, she was born to Dhanadatta. There was a small village in southern part of India named Karaikal. In that village, there lived a merchant community, and her father Dhanadatta was leader of this merchant community. He was so devoted to Lord Shiva. And so, our heroine. She was named as Punidavadi. Her original name is Punidavadi. Punidavadi was started her devotion towards Lord Shiva as soon as she started walking, because she was born to the house where everyone follows Lord Shiva. So Punidavadi always happy to help their parents to devotion. So Punidavadi always helped gathering flowers and finishing garlands and making prasadas, which means food which we give to God, and always goes to temple of Lord Shiva. And there also she helped cleaning the temple and whatever she can to help help for her devotion, she always do. As she grew, her devotion towards Lord Shiva also grew. So after few years, she became a beautiful maiden. Everyone wanted to marry her because she was so beautiful, and everyone knows that how much devotion she has with Lord Shiva. But her father Dhanadatan chose Paramadatan from the nearby state, and they both married. The marriage was so grand. Everyone was invited to the marriage, and everyone was so awed by the couple chemistry. The both were together. It was so beautiful. They were a perfect couple. During 4th century AD, it was the tradition we follow that after the marriage, woman has to live with their husband in their husband's house. But Punidavadi was their only child. Her father asked Paramadatan to stay in the same village. So he agreed. They started their marriage life in her own village. They started one new merchandise shop. Paramadatan started just nearby to their house, and they also started their marriage life in a new house near to their parents' house. Their marriage life was so great, the understanding was so great, and they loved each other very much. Usually, their life is like Paramadatan goes to shop, and he come back to house, and while Punidavadi was in the house, she always continued her devotion towards Lord Shiva. So, in those days, whoever is in those days, there are another devotees of Lord Shiva called as Sivanadiyargal. These Sivanadiyargals are pilgrims. So they usually go to one place to other place, and they visit all the temples of Lord Shiva. So those days we don't have any restaurants or hotels. So whoever is traveling to that Karaikal, they will start, they will eat in Punidavadi's house, because everyone knows Punidavadi is great at doing service towards Lord Shiva. So she always invited pilgrims of Lord Shiva to her house and gave food and her service. So this is so normal in her daily life. So their marriage life was so great and it was going smooth. One day, when Paramadatan was in his shop, one of his friend came to his shop and gave 2 tasty mangoes, because Paramadatan always loved this special mangoes from his friend's house. His friend remembered this and came to give those mangoes to Paramadatan. He happily got the mangoes and gave that mangoes to his servant and insisted his servant to give that to Punidavadi back in house, and told that he will come and eat that mango during lunch. So the servant got the mango and gave it to Punidavadi as insisted. Punidavadi got the mango and kept inside, and she started cooking for lunch. So as she was cooking the lunch, she heard a voice of devotee of Lord Shiva on Sivanadiyar came to his house asking for food. She was not finished preparing the lunch, so she gave rice and curd with one of the mango. It is very respectful that we have to give whatever is so special to our guest. So she gave one of the mango to Sivanadiar. Sivanadiar ate the curd rice and mango and very satisfied with her service, he blessed him and left the house. So Punitavadi was finished doing lunch and waited for her husband. After some time, her husband came to the house. She started serving the lunch and Paramadittan asked for a mango. Punitavadi went into the kitchen and got one remaining mango and gave it to Paramadittan. He tasted that mango and it was so tasty, so delicious. So he wanted to eat one more and he knew there were two. So he asked Punitavadi to give one more mango. But Punitavadi knew the truth and she don't want to disappoint her husband right away. She went to kitchen like she was going to get another mango and asked Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva, my husband is asking one more mango. Could you please give it to me? A mango appeared in her hands just like that. She came out of the kitchen with another mango and gave it to her husband. Now Paramadittan ate that mango, divine mango, and it was so tasty, so delicious. He never tasted this much tasty mango in his entire life. So he's told, how come the second mango was so tasty? How come two mangoes from same branch, two mangoes from same tree can differ from its taste this much? Now, Punitavadi don't want to lie. She felt that it is not fair to not tell the truth. She told the truth. When Sivanadiar came, that I gave one mango. When you asked me, I don't want to disappoint you. So I asked Lord Shiva to give one more mango. So he gave me. That's why. That was divine mango. That's why that was so tasty, I think. Now Paramadittan, of course, he was not believing her. No way. Who can believe like this? That Lord Shiva can give a mango for an ordinary, normal woman just like that? But he did not share his thoughts. Instead, he asked, oh, Lord Shiva gave you the mango? That's interesting. That was so tasty. Can you please ask your Lord Shiva to give one more mango? Hearing these sarcastic words, Punitavadi realized that her husband is not believing her. So they both went to the kitchen and Punitavadi asked Lord Shiva one more time, Lord Shiva, please now give me one more mango. You already gave me one more mango, but that is not important. My husband is not believing me. You have to give me one more mango. My husband then only can believe me. Then only my husband believe that I am having pure devotion with you. Please give me one more mango. Another mango appeared in her hands just like that. Paramadittan saw this and don't know how to react. He didn't know what to tell. When he went and tried to touch that another mango, it just disappeared because Paramadittan don't want to eat the mango. He just wanted to see whether what Punidavadi told is correct or not. So Lord Shiva proved it, and that other mango disappeared. Paramadatan left the house without saying a word. Punidavadi thought, okay, everything is clear now. He is believing in me, problem solved. She went back to her normal chores. But Paramatatan, after reaching his shop, he was thinking so many things in his mind. He was so confused. He don't know what to do, what to believe or what not to believe. And he was just so confused and took a decision. That night, he came back to his house and got Punidavadi, and they both went together to Punidavadi's parents' house. And Paramadatan told to his father-in-law, I decided to go for a sea merchandise. It may take some time. So please take care of Punidavadi. He left Punidavadi there and left the house. But it was so common to go for a sea merchandise those days, and it will take some months or some years to return. So no one got a doubt or something. Punidavadi happily stayed in her parents' house and continued her devotion towards Lord Shiva. Daily, he always thought about her husband. Months passed by, and so years. But Paramadatan did not return. Now, day by day, Punidavadi started to expect his husband to return. But no, he did not return. Her beautiful face was filled with sad and sorrow now. Her eyes was always filled with tears because she loved him so much. After a few years, some of the relatives came to tell a news, shocking news to Punidavadi that in nearby state they saw Paramadatan with another wife and a small kid. Everyone was so shocked, even though it was so normal for a man to marry 2 or 3 women at those times. But still, they were so shocked because they know how much they loved each other. Everyone knows that they did not have any fight or quarrel. What happened suddenly? They don't know. So everyone went to ask this from Paramadatan. They started their travel. They went to the nearby state, and after they reached there, they sent words to Paramadatan that Punidavadi came to visit you. As soon as Paramadatan heard these words, he started running by. He came running by, and as soon as he saw Punidavadi, he fell down with his knees and worshipped her. And he insisted to do the same to his new wife and kid. Punidavadi got so shocked and her eyes filled with tears. She didn't understand what is happening. Punidavadi's father asked, what is this, Paramadatan? What is happening? You have to explain me everything. Then only we can understand. So Paramadatan started explaining. Punidavadi got his small kid and started cuddling her, but her ears are with Paramadatan and what he was saying. So Paramadatan saying, he said the incident about the mango. Few years back, she asked to Lord Shiva. The mango appeared in her hands just like that. Not only one time, this happened 2 times. I saw this in my own eyes. I don't know what to do. I can't run a family with a divine figure. How can I run a family with a God? She is equal to God. I can't do that. And also, I was so confused at that time. And I also know that if I tell this, no one will believe me. That's why I did not tell to anyone. And I am sorry. I just left you. And I was so confused. I took that decision, but there is no coming back. For that day onwards, I was worshipping in my mind daily. I showed my devotion towards her. For that, I put Punindavati's name to my daughter. So Punindavati got shocked with those words. Every one of her family and relatives don't know what to do with this situation. Punindavati begged Paramadatan that she was not a divine being. She was not a god. She was just a normal human being. But Paramadatan did not believe her. At one point, Punindavati realized that what Paramadatan telling was true. That there was no way of going back to family life. She hated herself. She hated her beauty. She hated her life. She realized that she took this birth to serve Lord Shiva. So she took a decision. She pleaded Lord Shiva one more time. Lord Shiva, what is my purpose in this world? Why was I even born? What good is this lovely body of mine? Or this life that I live? Please take everything away from me. Take my beauty. Take my youth. Take my age. And please age me until I am old. Turn me into a ghostly form. For what use am I as a mere mortal? As soon as the words came out of her mouth, the air became thick with the ominous scent of impending doom. As the sky turned a sickly shade of grey, lightning bolts zigzagged across the horizon, illuminating the darkness with blinding flashes. The deafening sound of thunder echoed through the landscape, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Suddenly, a blinding beam of light pierced through the thick clouds, illuminating the figure standing below. As the light made contact with every inch of her body, time seemed to accelerate before their eyes, and her youth was rapidly stripped away, leaving her withered and ancient. It was a terrifying and awe-inspiring sight, a display of otherworldly power that left all who witnessed it shaken to their core. She became an old woman with the strength of her youth. Everyone witnessed what happened there, and no one dared not to believe it. Each and everyone including her parents, fell into their knees and worshipped her. She did not even take her name with her. As she was born in Karaikal, Karaikal Ammayar became her name. Ammayar means divine mother. So it is believed after that incident, she started her travel towards mountains of Himalaya because we are believed that Lord Shiva's abode was in the tip of the Himalaya mountain. In the travel, she visited each and every temple of Lord Shiva and recited poems and songs towards Lord Shiva. She was a very popular figure in early Tamil literature. As after she reached the bottom of the mountain Himalaya, she thought it is disrespectful to walk or climb with their feet because it was home of Lord Shiva. So she started walking upside down with her hands. And after she reached Lord Shiva invited her and called her mother, divine mother, because he told that he ate with her hands because he was the one who came as Shivanadiyar and ate that one mango. Thank you.
Thank you, Laxmi, for sharing that story. Yes, definitely a strong woman from the mythology. Thanks a lot. Any reasons for choosing this particular story, Lakshmi?
Yeah, I was, it is like another story. So I was selected for Emerging Storyteller Award from Storytellers of Canada last year, 2023. And I was shortlisting the story, what to tell to that award. So when I was shortlisting the story, just like that, this story came to my mind. I heard the story from my childhood, but I forgot that. But I just like that in my dream, it came just like that came to my mind. And that time I was not sure about the details of the story. Then I was having a mentor, so I told the mentor to I shortlisted the story and I told the mentor to tell the story. But my mentor told it is a powerful story. You have to work a lot with this story. So we just not selected for the award, but my mentor told that you have to work this story and you have to work. It is a like a calling for you. This is like a calling for you. So you have to start working on all 63 stories and you have to select this story as your first story. And she also told to work this story with one of the master class which was happening in Canada, in storytelling Toronto. So I worked this story with my master. So yeah, it was like a calling and I was happy to work this story with my master. And I told this story like 100 times, but I still believe I have a lot of work to do.
Oh, I love that humility. We always tell our stories and we always believe there's lots of work to do. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Lakshmi. With that note, I'll have to move to our next teller because always, we're almost pushing for time. Howard, if you can you switch your video on? I will be able to spotlight you only then. So yes, thank you, Howard. We have Howard Lieberman from Minnesota, spotlighting you there. Howard, please introduce yourself and share a story with us.
Good afternoon, or for me, it's good morning. I have no idea what time it is in India, but this is not my normal time of day to be dressed and telling stories. But I'm a storyteller. I've been a storyteller for many, many, many years, and I tend to live mostly on the personal narrative side of storytelling, but I tell the occasional folk tale, and I like to believe that my stories are a way for people to gain empathy for the world around them. And if I just tell stories and go, hey, look at me, that to me is not really a very valuable thing to be offering to the world and or to my listeners. So I try to find something that allows people to just open their hearts and their minds. And I'm going to do something a little different today. And that is a lot of people who tell personal narrative stories, it's the first person. It's I did this happened to me, I'm driving my car. And when people tell folk tales, it's more, well, it's certainly not in the first person because they're not a part of the folk tale. What I'm going to do today, and I've only done it a few times, is tell a personal narrative story in the third person. And why I would do that, I will leave that for you to think about, maybe discuss afterwards. And this piece is entitled Homeless Once Again. The boy entered the world like a normal boy. He would play, he would laugh, he would cry. But he was a happy boy, mostly. He loved his family. He was true to his Jewish faith. And he would get in trouble. He would do things he was not supposed to do, but he was a good boy. He was a very good boy. But one day, his father just left. And he was left with a brother and a mother and a knowledge that he had to be the person who held the family together. And he did all that. He cooked, he cleaned, he sewed, he dusted the little feet on that ancient table that sat in the living room. But one day, his mother died while he was still a young teenager, and he entered the world of adulthood at that point with no home and little more than a few dollars in his pocket, in the right pocket of jeans that he actually got from a Goodwill, a charitable store in his neighborhood. They had fraying knees and a small hole in the front left pocket where he would lose his coins. And he had no undergarments, and we don't know why he chose not to wear undergarments. Maybe he had none. Or maybe he saw no need, because life is sometimes cruel and harsh. And he began to roam the world as homeless people do. When you're homeless, he said, the road will take me where it takes me, and I will follow that road. And he went from place to place, and he would talk to people. He would tell stories. He would try to remain whole inside. But he couldn't always do that. And he developed a very angry, hurt persona inside of himself. And he began to see the world through, some people would say, whatever it is, the opposite of rose-colored glasses. His glasses were dark and angry as he wandered and wandered from place to place. And he would try to find a home wherever he went, tried to find a family of friends, of communal friends, of strangers, and he learned to trust, but only just a little bit because he was hurt too many times. And over the years, this boy began to grow into a young man. And as a young man, he found himself in New York City, which is not a place to be when you don't have a home. But he made a home. He made friends. And one day, the boy was sitting in a big room listening to Irish music, traditional Irish music. And he could hear in the melodies of the traditional Irish music something that touched his heart. Something that came in and said, maybe these people will find a home for you in their world. And he began to trust that community. He began to fall away from some of the things that he remembered from the past. And he would meet people who would greet him and not ask him where he was from, why he was here. They would ask him to be part of their world. He learned their culture. He learned their arts. He learned to dance. He never learned to sing because he could never carry a tune, but he was a very good dancer. And it was through his feet and his knees and his shins and his lower body that he began to find purpose as an Irish dancer. Which seems odd because he was a nice Jewish boy. Slowly, though, he began to adopt the culture, so much so that when he met a woman, an Irish woman, who touched his heart, he opened his heart and he let that woman in. He was always afraid that somehow, someday, that woman would hurt his heart and it would break again. But that never happened. And these two people married. These two people made a home. These two people had a child. And this child grew up to be a strong woman who herself married and had 2 children. And the boy, who had now become a man, began to look at the world through different eyes. They weren't rose-colored eyes. This boy, man, would never see the world with rose-colored eyes because there was a part of him. There was a part of him that would never, ever forget the past with the torn jeans and the broken heart and the loss that he felt. But he moved on. And as he began to become an older man, he became a part of the community around him. He became a leader in his community. And as a leader in the community, he began to remember who he was, where he came from. He renewed his love for the world. His fear of the world began to fade. He came back to his Jewish faith. He still liked the Irish culture. He still felt a part of the Irish culture. But he walked back to his Jewish faith and said, "You are me as well. You are me." And he would hear the melodies of the Jewish religious songs that were part of his youth that he had forgotten. He had forgotten. But as soon as he heard them again, he could feel them, not just hear them, feel them. And he became strong. He became whole. He forgot that he was once homeless. And that was a great joy. But then on October 7th of 2023, there was rape, there was murder, there was hatred directed at Jewish people in Israel. And he became torn. He had just come back to his past, not as a religious person, but as something that was part of his soul, his culture, his being. And he began to feel anger. The darkness with which he saw the world as a young man began to creep back in. He began to feel anger at a level he had not felt for many, many decades. And there began a great war, not just in the Middle East, where many, many lives were lost, and to this day continued to be lost, but a war within himself. The boy, remember the boy who had been homeless, began to say, "Old man, you forgot who you were. You let down your guard. And you're homeless again." Because in his own community, this man who had been a leader was experiencing anger at him merely because he was Jewish. He would walk on the street like he normally would because that's his exercise. And several people would cast aspersions on him because he was Jewish. But the man said to the boy inside of him, "Look at me, boy. Look at me. What happened to you in your youth was not something that you caused. It is something that happened to you. Do not let what is happening today that you didn't cause blacken your soul and find a place from which the anger will never leave." And the boy and the man, they fought. The boy wanted anger and retribution. The man wanted healing. I can tell you that the man won. The man refused to go back to the anger, the hatred, the self-recrimination. and instead looks out on the world and takes the boy by the hand and says to that boy, we will walk forward together and be a voice for healing, a voice for peace. And that's where they are right now at this moment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. I know a lot of us share personal stories, but I think this is an extremely personal story. As silly as it may sound, but I think it's at a very different level that you've shared the story, and all of us understand now as to why you chose to tell the story in third person. A very interesting experiment, I would say, that has worked very well with your story. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Opening it out to the audience, please, your thoughts.
Well, if there are no further questions.
No, I think it's rather a very heavy story. So it'll take us some time to sink in and before we open up. Yes, Moira is ready there. Please go ahead, Moira.
Yeah. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Maura. It's been a while.
It has been quite a while. Oh my, what a story. You know, I have high expectation when I read your name on a program, but you're even above that. I know your stories as personal stories, and I think I have a guess why you took third person. It's hard for me to explain. Maybe if it has less to do with I, maybe it has more to do with us. So I felt I was experiencing I also the other way around. I'm also everybody is experiencing with what you tell, but maybe even more so. And it's like sort of, if I ever heard a healing story, it's this one, and I've heard quite a few good ones. And it's just sort of, you took us through all these stages of the pain in your youth and the growing up. I have a Jewish friend here in the neighborhood who was doing just fine, and when October 7 happened, all of her childhood trauma came back. So it's, in a way, you're not the only one. So all I can say is thank you, and it's really taking the child by the hand. And what I know is that there are really many people out there who do exactly that, no matter how hard it is, like the peace movement in Israel and so on. It's tough for the two sides to approach, is even to tolerate each other, but they do it anyway. And it's one of the most wonderful stories for me, and I thank you from all my heart.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Anybody else? No. I think yes, Howard, go ahead.
I would just say storytelling is a very complex art form for me. And sometimes it's hard for me, and I won't generalize, to separate my own experiences from the broader world around me. And as a musician who plays, I'm not a musician, but I love music. And if I listen to a fine musician, I feel it resonate with inside of me. It's not just merely an intellectual exercise of going, well, she hit those notes so perfectly. It's something that I can feel. And I'm trying to find ways to take storytelling and move it to a place that not only touches me, but can touch inside of people. And I don't want it to ever be, oh, look at Howard, poor Howard, or look at Howard, look what he did, or look, it's the world and our place in that world, whatever that is not just about us. It's about the people who share the planet, who share our dinner plates with us. And that's what I'm experimenting with here. And so this is frankly the first, and I've never done this before, but this is not only the first time I've told a story like this in third person. This is the first time I've told this particular story anywhere. And I wanted to find a way to bring hope, to bring some sense of conflict and marry that with a sense of hope. Because without that, we all see the world through dark glasses, and I don't want that.
Yes, hope is all that we are left with all the terrible things happening around the world. And thank you so much for putting that message across, Howard. I think with that, we will wrap today's story session. We've had some very interesting variety of stories. There have been personal stories, both very touching and extremely personal, and told very beautifully. There were a very naughty, fun Irish folktale, strong mythological stories, very interesting stories all across. Looking forward to another session tomorrow at 2:30, which is going to be a hybrid event. So we have storytellers in person in Chennai sharing stories along with storytellers online for our next session of this 12 series. With that, I think it's a wrap for now. I will be stopping the recording now, and it's over to you, Eric. Thank you. Thank you once again, everybody.